The council chamber buzzed with anxiety. Representatives of a dozen species crowded around a circular table, their eyes fixed on a central holodisplay, projecting the grim news. A swarm of red dots advanced steadily across the star map, a relentless tide cutting through systems, leaving a trail of silence and ruin in their wake. Their adversaries were a race so ancient their very name was feared throughout the galaxy. These creatures weren't interested in diplomacy, trade, or conquest. They consumed everything, planets, resources, even the light from distant suns, as if devouring the universe itself. Every ship, every fleet that the Council had sent against them had been swallowed, like rocks tossed into an ocean, without so much as a ripple left behind. "This is all that remains of Sector 9," one representative said, his voice trembling as he gestured to the scattered blue dots on the map, all that was left of the Council's defenses. "Nothing we throw at them makes a difference. Our weapons are ineffective, our tactics obsolete. They cut through our strongest armadas as if they're vapor." Another counselor, from a species with skin the color of crushed emeralds, clenched her mandibles. "Our finest minds are stumped. Every solution we've devised has failed. At this rate, they'll reach our core worlds in less than a solar cycle." A murmur of despair rippled through the assembly. There was talk of surrender, of negotiation, but everyone knew it was futile. This wasn't an enemy that bargained. They took, consumed, and moved on. For the first time in millennia, the Council faced a force they couldn't outsmart or outgun. Then, from a shadowed corner of the room, a faint voice spoke up. It was Councillor Varere, a relatively junior member, often overlooked due to her inexperience. Her feathers ruffled nervously as she cleared her throat. "There may be another option," she said, the words hanging in the air like a delicate thread. All eyes turned to her, some curious, others already dismissive. She hesitated, but pressed on. "Humans." The room fell silent, then erupted in disbelief. "Humans? Those primitives?" scoffed one counselor, a figure with crystalline skin that shimmered with every word. "They're newcomers, barely a century into space travel. They lack the sophistication, the technology." Varere took a deep breath, standing a bit taller. "I know what they lack. But they're not like us. They don't think like us, don't fight like us. And there are stories, small ones perhaps, but remarkable. In battles where other fleets would withdraw, they charge. Where other species falter, they adapt. Maybe, just maybe, they'll see something we don't." Skeptical glances exchanged across the table. Many had heard rumors of human resilience and adaptability, but they'd always attributed it to exaggeration or luck. Humans were erratic, impulsive, a dangerous combination when coupled with relatively primitive technology. But in the face of an unstoppable enemy, the Council was willing to try anything. A voice finally broke through the quiet. "You're suggesting we contact them? Ask them to defend us against a fleet that has defeated our best?" "Yes," Varere replied, her voice more confident now. "Because we're out of time. They're our last hope." After a long, heavy silence, a decision was reached. They would send a distress signal, encrypted with every diplomatic protocol, every plea they could muster. A transmission was prepared and broadcast across the stars, directed toward human space. As it went out, the Council held their collective breath, wondering if the humans would even respond. Hours after the distress signal was sent, an alert sounded in the Council chamber. The Council members leaned forward, watching in surprise as a lone blip appeared on their scanners, approaching their coordinates at a speed well beyond standard Council ships. A single human vessel, a medium-sized ship, worn and patched in places, bearing the name Audacity. The Council had expected an entire human fleet, bristling with reinforcements, or at least a task force. Instead, they got one ship. Disappointment rippled through the counselors. This wasn't what they had in mind. They exchanged glances, murmuring their doubts, wondering if this was some sort of misunderstanding or worse, an insult. They'd heard tales of human audacity, but this bordered on arrogance. Was this how humans intended to respond to a call for help? Then, the screen flickered, and the image of the Audacity's captain appeared, seated in the command chair with a relaxed expression. She was calm, almost casual, her uniform neat but worn, suggesting countless encounters with hostile forces. Her eyes held a glint, a quiet confidence. She studied the assembled counselors, a hint of amusement in her gaze. "Good evening, counselors," she greeted them, her tone just shy of sardonic. "We received your call for assistance." The council leader cleared his throat, visibly perturbed. "Captain, we appreciate your prompt response. But," he hesitated, choosing his words carefully, "this enemy fleet is formidable, beyond anything we've encountered. We were expecting more." The captain smiled faintly. "One ship's enough." There was a pause as her words sank in. Counselors exchanged incredulous looks, unsure if she was serious. One finally spoke up, unable to mask his frustration. "Captain, you're facing a force that has wiped out entire fleets without a single loss. One ship won't even scratch the surface." The captain's gaze sharpened, the amusement fading slightly. "Counselors," she replied, her voice unwavering, "this isn't our first time facing impossible odds. And believe me, it's not about the numbers. It's about knowing how to use what you've got. Humanity specializes in figuring that out." Doubt hung heavy in the air. The counselors had spent their lives relying on their superior fleets, vast resources, and centuries-old tactical systems. The idea that a single, unassuming human ship could handle what they could not seemed absurd. But there was something about the captain's confidence that gave them pause. As the counselors watched, the Audacity began a series of maneuvers, positioning itself between the council's fleet and the incoming threat. The human crew moved swiftly, almost casually, some even exchanging jokes as they prepared for battle. No one seemed particularly alarmed, not even tense. The crew's attitudes were so relaxed that it bordered on arrogance, a contrast to the council's mounting panic. Council members observed, baffled, as the Audacity's crew went about their work with an air of calm focus. One counselor finally whispered to his neighbor, "Are they not aware of the risk? Or are they simply mad?" But the captain, as if sensing their doubt, tapped a few commands on her console and opened a channel to the council. "Counselors," she said, "I understand that our methods may seem unorthodox to you. But let me assure you, this ship was built for situations exactly like this. Just sit tight and watch." As the council watched, the darkness of space began to shift, a massive fleet emerging from the void. Enemy ships filled the screen, stretching beyond the limits of the display, countless vessels bristling with advanced weaponry, each one an apex predator of destruction. Their design was sleek, angular, and almost beautiful in a predatory way. This was a fleet built to annihilate, leaving nothing but silent, empty systems in its wake. For the council, seeing it firsthand was a nightmare made real. The enemy had arrived. The councilors' faces were pale, some trembling, eyes wide as they took in the sheer scale of the threat. There were murmurs of resignation, some already calculating the odds of survival, others steeling themselves for inevitable defeat. The council leader swallowed hard, his voice a thin whisper. "They're unstoppable. Nothing can stand against that." Their gaze shifted to the Audacity, their supposed last line of defense. Only a single ship stood between them and oblivion, an underdog vessel in the face of overwhelming power. Hope flickered briefly, tempered by a deep, sinking doubt. Inside the Audacity, the crew was calm, operating with a smooth rhythm that belied the impending danger. The captain studied the fleet on her console, an intense focus in her eyes. Unfazed by the display of alien might, she issued a series of rapid orders. Crew members moved with precision, their faces set with quiet determination. They seemed completely unaffected by the scale of the enemy forces, more like they were settling in for routine maneuvers than bracing for an apocalyptic clash. On the council screens, they watched as the Audacity began a series of strange, seemingly reckless maneuvers. The captain was positioning her ship at odd angles, deploying small drones that whirred through space in carefully calculated paths. Gravity fields rippled around the Audacity, bending space in ways the council's technology couldn't replicate. The councilors observed, bewildered, as the drones moved into patterns that made no sense to them, some even embedding themselves in asteroids or linking into formations around the enemy ships. "What are they doing?" one counselor whispered, his eyes fixed on the humans' unconventional tactics. "Are they toying with them?" But the captain's movements were calculated, even elegant. Her orders came with the precision of someone who had faced impossible odds before and knew how to turn them to her advantage. Her crew responded with the same level of focus, as if this terrifying alien fleet were just another routine challenge. Doubt crept into the counselors' minds, mingling with their fear. Maybe, just maybe, the humans knew something they didn't. As the enemy fleet surged forward, they unleashed a torrent of weaponry, beams of energy and projectile volleys converging on the Audacity. But the human ship moved like a dancer, each movement precise, each turn anticipating the next assault. Enemy fire swept past it, missing by hair's breadths, as if the Audacity anticipated every attack. The Council watched in stunned silence as the Audacity responded with tactics that defied convention. Rather than engage head-on, it seemed to provoke the enemy's AI-driven weapons into firing at nothing, tricking their targeting systems with rapid, erratic maneuvers. When one enemy ship locked onto it, the Audacity twisted just enough to let the blast fly harmlessly past, striking another enemy vessel instead. Every movement was deliberate chaos, unpredictability weaponized. Then, the Audacity initiated its main weapon. The captain gave the order, and a deep hum resonated from the ship's core, growing louder, a vibration felt even through the Council's distant screens. The counselors leaned forward as the ship's hull glowed faintly, space around it bending and warping. The weapon, a gravity-based energy cannon, fired, sending a wave of distorted spacetime that cut through the enemy line, bending, twisting, and obliterating ships in its path. Counselors gasped as they witnessed the cannon's effects. It was unlike anything they had seen, a blast that didn't move in straight lines but weaved unpredictably, splitting into fractal patterns, each branch wreaking havoc on the enemy fleet. The weapon's range and impact were astounding, and the fleet that had seemed invincible now looked vulnerable. Several enemy ships collapsed into themselves under the cannon's force, while others spiraled out of control, systems overloaded by the gravitational distortions. As more alien ships attempted to retaliate, the Audacity seemed to anticipate every move. Crew members executed seamless countermeasures, diverting attacks by bouncing signals between drones and even hacking into enemy ships. At one point, they targeted the flagship, exploiting a flaw in its network defenses, momentarily disabling its command system. The enemy's coordination faltered, confusion rippling through their ranks as the Audacity pressed its advantage. The Council watched in awe, realization dawning. It wasn't just the technology that made the Audacity formidable, it was the way the humans wielded it, with creativity, boldness, and a willingness to take risks that defied their own instincts. Every tactic the humans employed seemed to play into the chaos of battle, shifting the odds in their favor. One by one, enemy ships crumbled, while the Audacity kept moving, unscathed, a beacon of defiance in a field of ruin. The counselors, who had doubted, now sat in silent admiration, witnessing the raw ingenuity and courage that had turned the tide. The enemy fleet, once unstoppable, was breaking under the relentless adaptability of a single human ship. The battlefield was silent, except for the fading remnants of enemy ships drifting into the void. The alien fleet, once an unstoppable force, was now shattered, reduced to a few surviving vessels that, rather than regroup, began a swift retreat, stunned by the unexpected defeat they just endured. The Audacity, still intact and resolute, remained in position, its gravity cannon silent, its crew watching as the enemy remnants vanished into the dark expanse. In the council chamber, members sat in speechless awe, struggling to reconcile what they had just witnessed. Their initial skepticism had been shattered as completely as the enemy fleet. Finally, the council leader found his voice, addressing the image of the human captain on the screen. "Captain, I don't have the words to express our gratitude. You have saved us all. A single ship, one human ship." He trailed off, shaking his head as if trying to dispel the disbelief lingering in his mind. The captain nodded, her expression modest but carrying a hint of satisfaction. "I'm glad we could help," she replied, her tone firm yet warm. "Humanity doesn't take calls for aid lightly. When we show up, we make sure we're ready for anything." Another counselor spoke up, her voice tinged with awe. "We never would have believed it possible. Your technology, your tactics, it's unlike anything we've ever seen. We doubted, and yet you delivered what our best forces could not." The captain's gaze softened slightly, and she seemed to consider her next words carefully. "Look, we may be new to the galactic scene, and maybe our ways seem unconventional. But we've learned, sometimes the hard way, that being underestimated has its perks. We adapt. We innovate. And we're not afraid of the impossible." The counselors listened intently, the weight of her words sinking in. They'd thought of humans as newcomers, limited, even primitive. Now, that perception had shifted completely. There was something in humanity's nature, some combination of resilience, unpredictability, and a touch of recklessness, that made them formidable allies or adversaries. One counselor leaned forward, his tone almost reverent. "Captain, what you've shown us today will not be forgotten. Humanity's strength goes beyond mere technology. It's something far deeper, something that we can't fully understand yet, but that we must respect." The captain gave a slight smile, almost a hint of pride. "Well, let's just say, if you ever need us again, we'll be ready. And don't worry, we still have a few surprises left up our sleeve." With a final nod, she ended the transmission, and the council members watched as the Audacity powered up, pivoting in place before moving off toward the far reaches of space. Its engines flared, and in moments it disappeared, leaving only the memories of what it had accomplished. In the silence that followed, the counselors exchanged thoughtful glances. Humanity, they realized, was not just another species to be categorized and managed. They were a force unto themselves, bound by no conventions and driven by a determination that defied logic. And so, a new story began to spread across the galaxy, of a single human ship that had saved an entire coalition, a ship called Audacity that had shown the galaxy the true meaning of courage.